Hello everybody and welcome to Artisan Mentoring, where we talk about everything piano craft. We talk about tools, we talk about techniques on how to service pianos, we talk about tuning really out of tune pianos. And today we're going to be talking about kind of the grand piano tuning technique, kind of my technique. I didn't invent it. I picked a lot of things up over the years, and so this is kind of my protocol, and this is how I train all of our technicians. For those of you that have taken the PTA course or the original one, whatever years ago, it's kind of the same principle that that I taught in that as well. And that is, the posture is incredibly important. And I see a lot of people that seem to do a fairly good tuning, but the posture is just very questionable. And I just wonder if that's going to cause issues long term on the back or the shoulders or so I'm just going to kind of set what our expectation is for within our company, Artisan Piano Services, and kind of line out what we do. How's that sound? Does that work? So it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, there's a lot of talk about tuning levers, and so whether you use a yawn, whether you have a Fujin, whether you have a Casado, a Supply 88 hammers, that's kind of a whole other separate thing. But what I want to do is just kind of show you how I hold the hammer, and this is something that my mentor, John, he showed me, and granted, this was about 20 years ago, so he might have changed his tune a little bit, evolved. But what I like to do is hold the hammer when I'm tuning a grand piano. When I'm tuning it upright, I'm up here. I'm holding the ball tip up here, and I'm right here. I'm not down here. I'm not kind of doing this. I'm right up here, and it feels really good. When I'm at my grand pianos, though, I am more like this. This is my technique. It's not here like the upright pianos. It's not here, it's not here. It's all of this. And so if you can kind of see that, and we've talked about this before, but I don't know if I've ever shown you it in action. This is literally how I hold it. And for this reason, I like more of the 11-inch long tuning levers, because if they're way out here, I just don't feel like I have that control. And so by holding it this way, I feel like my hand literally becomes part of the hammer. And so when you're tuning this way, we're just gonna knock it so far out of tune, y'all. It's just gonna get bad. So it's weird because now that I'm because it's kind of funny because I don't ever look at it, but literally I can look at it while I'm talking to you, and I don't know. So if I'm gonna press it down, I literally my thumb always stays present, and I'll kind of lift my other whatever appendages. And so I'm pressing right there on that kind of ball area. Can you see that? And so it's kind of I don't know, Victor, have you ever tried this technique? Is this a normal technique?
I've tried that, but our technique is really different. We're all on the ball end and kind of using, well, I'll talk about it later because it's kind of in depth, but sure. I've tried it, but it's not.
Yeah, no, and I'm one of those people that's like, hey, because a lot of people are going to be up here, and I just find that it feels like there's a disconnect between the movement and once you travel all the way up to this point. But again, I've heard some amazing, most people don't tune this way or hold the hammer this way, so I can't be like, no, you all have to do it. This is just the way I've always done it. And so while you may not care for kind of this hand positioning, and I would say that some hammers make it impossible to do this hand positioning, What I do recommend is this. I really, whether you choose that hand positioning or not, I really do recommend this concept of this magic square. And so I don't know where this came up with. I would love to take credit for it. I don't know if I came up with it, but basically, if you imagine, like, this is literally what I'm doing is right here. Is you have almost this square, and if I pivot it downwards on the tuning pin, this is kind of how I'm doing it. So again, going up like this, you got this kind of square happening right here. And so that, my friends, is what I really do recommend, because the posture, you're able to keep the hammer from going too far one way or the other. You keep it in line. Where I see a lot of people do it is kind of this stuff, way out here, and then other people are kind of like way in here. So I just have found this happy medium being like this little kind of square. And if I have to move the pin a little bit, I'll kind of move my body to compensate. So depending on where I'm at with that pin, and I'll kind of move in and out, but I'm keeping this posture. And I have to tell you, I mean, I've tuned a lot of pianos, probably in the neighborhood of 1,000 pianos a year for the last 20 years. So I've tuned a lot of pianos, and I still feel good, like healthy wise. And so I really recommend, whether you do this technique or not with your hand placement, I really do recommend kind of trying out this concept when we're talking about tuning grand pianos and this kind of magic square. Questions about that?
So Dave, as you move through the pins from the base to the treble, you're shifting your body on the stool, or shifting the stool back farther and farther so that you keep that structure of the square, correct?
That's 100% right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm keeping that as kind of my North Star, if you will. So I'll just kind of tune. Go ahead. I'll just kind of go through this right here where you can see it. No, I like this angle. Just go through my unisons right there. So that's kind of my rhythm right there. So as you can see, it's just very, very consistent with this kind of magic square. I'm trying to make it so that I'm staying between, what would that be? That would be 10 and 2. That's, as far as the string goes. If I'm looking at the string, I don't want it to, for my hammer, like I don't want to be tuning like this. And I see this a lot, and I have to say, I've heard some great tunings come from people that do tune this way. So I can't be like, no, never do it. I'm just saying that when you're tuning it this way, you're putting a weird amount of pressure in a weird area on that tuning pin. And so the idea is that you keep the tuning pin roughly in the same direction of the string within a certain amount. What we're not wanting to do is the string's going this way and your tuning hammer's right here, because you're going to be prone to bending the tuning pin in kind of a funky way.
Do you stay in the same position at the higher register, like higher octaves?
So what I do,
I was hitting my elbow on the case last time I did one, so I had to stand.
Yeah. So I usually get to about. Sorry, you can still see me. Yeah, perfect. I usually get to about here, within the last octave, and by this time I might kind of like, I want to sit up a little bit. So I might go like this and tune from like standing up right here.
Yeah, that's how I did it.
Yeah, or I may go like this and kind of like my chest is against this bell of the piano right here and tune the rest of it like that. I've had some where I've also kind of wrapped my my arm around the lid prop like this and tune the last little bit. And I can't remember why I did that. There was a reason, but I've done that before. So that's my 3. Usually I'll come all the way up to here, and then I might stand for the last octave or half an octave. I might sit down like what I'm doing right now and just kind of keep it going. Or I might kind of do this weird kind of reaching around if I'm obstructed in some weird way. But those are kind of the 3 ways that I will do it.
Yeah, David, I had a piano that was up against a wall, so it was at an angle, so I was able to come around to the backside where the curl of the piano is and work from that side and my hand across the top to play the note.
Okay.
So yeah, might have to get into weird situations on that last octave.
Yeah, and it's all the more reason if you can start now this early in your career and work to kind of getting some of that left-handed tuning down, that's going to really help you with that last little bit of an octave. Yeah, so I only tune grand pianos with 3 tools. I'll have my ETD, Rayburn Cyber Tuner, and I'll usually have a little bracket, and I'll show you that on Wednesday when we kind of try to blow through and tune this entire piano on Wednesday. It's got a little bracket that clamps to the plate. By the way, Dawn and Mark are currently creating a new bracket bolt system for ETDs, and that will be out at some point, and we'll let you know when it is. But it'll grip onto the plate so that you can kind of put it anywhere in there, and that holds your ETD. Then I'm right now really fond of this little, it's like a 3" by 1/2" tuning wedge. I'm using this all the time right now. I love it. I don't know why. The size is just, I don't know, just right. And then a tuning lever. So those 3 tools, you can tune the entire piano really quickly, really efficiently, and you just kind of get up steam. Now, we've talked about how to practice tuning. And so just as a refresher, one of the things that we really recommend here at Artisan, actually, we don't recommend it. We make our technicians do it, right? With our apprentices, we go ahead and have them starting in the bass. We just go ahead and say, start with the bichords and then move your way down to the trichords. And so we say, break the unison, and bring it back up. So it's just simply like what I was doing just a second ago. Break it. And you're just getting used to moving your body. Listening for those clicks, trying to feel those clicks. So we have them go through the entire piano that way, and we're just having them break that first unison, like that first string. So that would be the far left string. And once they get to the point where they're really quick, they're really fluid at that, and they're just listening to that right there, and it sounds pretty good. Again, we don't need it to sound perfect. We want them to just get their muscle memory. We want them to get used to that movement and that not getting too stuck on the sound quite yet. And so just kind of quickly going through that. Once you get to the trichords, what we usually have them do is, mute off. That's nice. just have that mute off the far right string and move to the next one. You have them do this, or you do this for a week. By the end of it, this piano is going to sound crazy. It almost already kind of sounds like we did do that, but we didn't. It just sounds really rough. But yeah, that's the way to kind of start practicing and getting that fluid motion, because it is different. It is very different with the upright versus the grand. And I, for one, love tuning grands for the simple fact that I like to sit down. Jacob, are you a stander or a sitter?
Oh, it's definitely grand pianos I prefer, just for my back's sake, yes.
Thought as much. I'm like, some people though, they like to stand. You know, we had
for a grand?
Yeah, we had this competition, and he was like,
How tall are they?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He
He
was pretty short. He was 5'5", 5 foot. Like, you know, not, you know, so he could stand, and it was like, so, but yeah, most people, I would say, sit at a grand piano. To be honest, that's another reason I like tuning spinets over consoles, because at least with a spinet, I could sit down and tune it. Whereas a console, I'm kind of doing this halvesy.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I stand up at the last section where the when your dampers go away, then I stand up.
We're talking tuning technique specifically with the grand, Jacob. I don't know, were you here the entire time where we're talking about hand placement on the hammer?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, I'm curious what your thought is on this. So the way I've learned or been told or evolved to holding the tuning hammer is not over here, but to kind of hold it throughout. Let's see if I can do it. Kind of holding it throughout like that.
Sure. Yeah.
How would you tune a grand piano? I'm just so curious what everybody's protocol is and why.
So I've kind of gone through many different iterations of that, right? I have tried that method where you grab it kind of like that, and you're like you were showing. I tend to like that way actually when it's a really tight pin, like a Steinway or a Baldwin that kind of fights you a bunch.
Yeah.
Then I tend to like that way better. The one that I'm currently experimenting with is the way that one of the technicians in Germany, he highly recommended flagpoling, and so I've been, I was kind of told not to do that, right? And I've definitely avoided flagpoling, but also over the years I have watched people, and I think flagpoling to a certain extent happens almost all the time.
Sure. Whether you want it or not, there's some amount of that happening.
Right. So I think it's more of a, I think people that were always saying like, do not flagpole. I think they're talking about like, don't bend the pin if you're more than like 2 or 3 cents away.
Okay.
If you're gonna do more than that, it's not gonna work right. But if you're just kind of, and at least this is my experimentation. I love that there's many ways of tuning, and I've actually also been experimenting with your way of going down first and then coming back up. I've actually been enjoying that. But yeah, I currently that is the way that I've been experimenting, and I don't have a tuning lever with me right now. I have this guy, but yeah.
So when you say you're going and through it and flagpoling, you're getting it there and then just I find that with the flagpoling though technique, you have to do a harder test blow. Is that right?
Yeah, I do, but
okay.
I think so. Yeah, it's it wasn't like he wasn't presenting it as the way, but he did challenge me personally, and that's what I've been trying to do. And it actually on specific like Bechsteins and really high end pianos, it works really well actually, especially when you're trying to do it very very quickly. Then then actually just kind of getting it pretty close to where you want it to be, and then kind of flagpoling it back into place.
Yeah.
That's what I've been experimenting with.
So,
I think it's a more foolproof method to stay away from that one for a while.
yeah, that's a very good point. So, talk to me then about hand placement. You're using your Rayburn, right? Quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah.
So, if I remember right, it's probably more of a like this. Is that right? How you would hold it?
Actually, let me go grab it really quick. I'll be right back.
I want to see that again.
Yeah, David, I would say with my Rayburn, I've been holding more to the ball end more than anything. And I would have my hand palm kind of on top of the ball end, so I'd be pulling from there.
Okay. Are you holding it like this, or is it more like that?
More on top, like the second one, not the first one. More like that.
Okay. And you have the 13-incher one, right?
No, mine's more like 10.5-ish.
Okay, so it's shorter.
David, with the thumb, and I felt very uncomfortable with the thumb pressure. So I just kept the same structure, but just dropped the thumb underneath.
Okay, got it. All right, Jacob, let's see this thing.
Oh, okay. So, generally, I'm kind of holding it like this when I'm moving from pin to pin. I kind of like I do hold it like this for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
However, when it's really close, I actually kind of choke up on it, because then the lever that the pressure that you're putting on it as you get closer to the fulcrum is a lot less. You have to put more pressure the closer you get to that fulcrum. So being up here gives you a little bit more control with the same kind of pressure. So like it really does depend. With the Rayburn, it kind of has that, like, it has a little bit of a handle for that specific thing. But yeah.
Well, and I would have to say too that depending on the tuning lever, for instance, like this is, I don't know what you call this, but this is like the full tang. This is a has that full metal in it, so this thing weighs a lot compared to something like the Rayburn, which is way more lightweight, and so you're going to hold it differently to get the amount of force, I would say. And so, like, when I tried the Supply 88, that hammer is like the lightest hammer in existence. And it took me a while to just be like, whoa, I feel like I'm having to do way more in some areas. I can feel more, but I'm used to this weight coming, and going. So, but
one thing I really want to try, and if anyone has access to this, let me know. But have you tried the impact levers?
Oh.
Impact on a Grand, or
just on anything? The impact levers.
So
Rayburn
sells them. There used to be cheaper ones, but they're gone.
I had
that use a lot for uprights.
Say that again, Michael.
for doing uprights.
For uprights, yeah. I
I
have heard
think
that for uprights, actually.
I think that they're a great idea after you learn how to tune a piano.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because
But I
we
really want to. I've never tried one. I really want to try one.
yeah, they're not cheap. I think. Hey, Coburn, do you have an impact hammer?
No, but I remember when your brother Adam had used it, I had asked him what his experience was with it. He didn't particularly say that he liked it. I asked him how it was for pitch raises, like major pitch raises,
Yeah.
and he said it didn't really save much time either on that. Though some technicians do say that saves them time on pitch raises,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure how they are on just small finite movements.
I want to meet somebody who's used
Yeah,
the grand one.
Yeah,
That one is crazy looking.
yeah. It's weird. I really want to try it. That's one thing that I've never tried. I'm just
Yeah,
throwing it
Randy's
out there.
almost out with his. Randy's about to come out with his upright one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Okay, I gotta keep.
Wait, he's got an upright one he's coming up with?
Yeah, he's been posting like every once in a while he'll put like a sneak peek of it, and he finally reposted one like kind of final or trying out new counterweights. It looks really cool.
Randy's such a tease. I love it. Yeah, I think my big thing is, we hired a technician, and he was a great kid. He was able to tune the uprights really well, and he did that in his test to kind of join the team. And unfortunately, it took him a long time to get to the point where he could tune a grand piano because he was so used to relying on the impact hammer. He couldn't really feel when he was moving the tuning pin and getting a solid tuning. And so that was definitely something that he struggled with, and that was kind of an eye opener for us. So that even if technicians come to us and they want to eventually do the impact, we just say let's get you set up first with knowing how to tune, because otherwise it could be a crutch, and it kind of was. As far as we've talked about this before, the test blows. I'm kind of one of the quieter tuners. I don't know, Coburn. Would you say you're quieter or a heavier handed tuner?
I was doing some pretty hard test blows at first. And then when I saw one of our techs up in Seattle, Tom Erickson, do it, he was just doing it very softly. I was like, oh, okay. And then, of course, Stephen Brady up in Seattle area is doing his big forearm test blows at the end of a tuning and touching up notes. And I'm doing something.
Forearm test blow. What does that mean?
Yeah, so
I don't know if I want to know.
I've just got a little electronic keyboard here, but Brady, he'll just go through after the tuning and just really pound on all the keys.
Like this?
Yep, but with both forearms all the way up and down the keyboard.
Ooh, I don't like that. Yeah,
No, but it does reveal instability. And what I've been using instead is just the massage gun to go by the strings next to the egg.
I saw that in your toolkit. I'm like, what is this? Oh my gosh.
I use it to tap down strings on the bridge as well.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. That's funny because I meant to ask you about that, Coburn, like what the massage thing was for. I thought it was like when you're in a customer's house, you're just like, I just need a little self-care.
No, but it has revealed instability, and so the strings that have slipped, I'll just go back and quickly shim them back up real quick with the tuning lever, and it has been the strings with the shorter non-speaking length.
Okay, interesting. Wow. So,
and it's a lot quieter using the massage gun with all the dampers up than going through with the forearm test blows.
Wow.
See, I've done the forearm testing after a major pitch raise where it's like, you know, it's restrung and you're having to do probably another couple in the near future. And so that kind of, for me, I've noticed that will even out the tuning and make it go flat again very quickly. But that's what I want, because it's a newly strung piano. So, you know, that's what you need to do. But I've never really done that on like concert tunings or in someone's house. So
Here's
it's an
a question,
interesting idea.
Jacob.
And I've
For
never
you,
used a massage gun either, so I should try that.
Jacob, for you, how many cents flat or sharp does it have to be on a piano before you're like, I need to do a second pass on this? I need to do a pitch raise. I need to do something. What
automatically,
Yeah.
like definitely 10,
Okay.
usually
Yeah.
like 8. If it's a concert and I have enough time, I'll do it anyway,
Yeah.
even if it's like 5 cents, just because the closer you can get it and even out the tension before the tuning,
Yeah.
the more that's going to stay in tune, the longer it's going to stay in tune, the more stable it's going to be.
Yeah, I always think that 7 to 10 cents, it's like, you should do another pass. So that's interesting. Okay. Funny enough, I don't know what made me think about this, but Yamaha pianos are notoriously easy pianos to tune. You know, they go where you want them to go. Their pins move smoothly, and I didn't know this, but I never really measured it. But one of the ways that they've been able to accomplish this is they actually use a 1/0 tuning pin or a 1.5. Isn't that crazy? The smaller, thinner.
That's really small.
Huh.
I can't
I've
remember.
never noticed that.
Yeah. So I can't remember if it's a 1 or 1.5, but they don't use 2s. It's smaller than a 1. It's smaller than a 2. And they do that.
So it seats deeper? Is that?
No, not even that it seats deeper. Is it that you have a smaller surface area for that string to travel and you can get a more accurate, quicker tuning?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And so it's kind of a genius thing to do.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know if you run across that.
I should mention that. That's cool.
For that, if you're going that direction, there's got to be, you're sacrificing something for that, right? There is a trade-off.
I don't know what the only thing I could think of is because there's less surface area for that string, you'll have to pull up more to get it into tune, maybe. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, if you think of gears in a bicycle, the smaller it is, the more you have to pedal, you know.
Susceptible to humidity effects?
Yamaha is so incredibly stable, though.
Most of them are, yes.
At least the ones, here in the Northwest. I don't know what it's like in Utah.
The Chinese ones tend to be a little bit weird sometimes.
Yeah, the B series.
The H, the ones.
Oh, yeah. So, any other questions about
Usually pretty stable.
posture or some of the technique? On Wednesday, we're going to go through and just kind of blow through a whole tuning, because I think that that's sometimes helpful for people to see a tuning happen in real time, and you can see, okay, how are they moving? How are they moving? What's good enough? What's not good enough, and stuff like that.
Hey, David, I have a comment about test blows, though.
Yeah,
if that's okay. So I've always admired people that can tune very quietly and set it there, and I know that it's possible because I've gone after those people and have tested them, and they are stable. So that is something that can be achieved. The reason why I tend to just do it anyway, and it's not really hard, but I'll hit it kind of quietly to get it there and be mostly stable, and then I'll hit it just to see if it stays stable. And the reason why I do that is because that's how the PTG generally tests stability. And so if it's, it's gone through many iterations of, many technicians that want to, that particular test, the RL tuning test. And so, yeah, you have it. There you go.
Yeah, I actually really recommend you all buy one of these. They're not that expensive. You buy them at the PTG, and this is a really good, just simple test for you.
It's a good reference of how hard to do it too.
Yeah. And let's just say you are tuning it really quietly and you're like, I think that my tunings are stable. I think I'm good. Buy one of these.
Try it. Yeah.
Is it 3 times that they kind of do it in the RPT exams?
I think so.
Yeah.
So just keeping that in mind, there is, as you're developing your technique, make sure that you're positive about that particular thing when you go into the test, because they are going to do that. So
good point.
So if you're occasionally testing it throughout as you develop, that might be a way of doing it. But just keep that in mind.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because like what you're saying is you've met technicians that tune very quietly, but you've been able to see that they actually are stable,
Yeah.
And
so I know it's possible.
Yeah.
And I would imagine yours are. I haven't tested yours, David, but I've worked with so many people that have different ways of doing it. And so at least nowadays, I kind of go at it from, I trust you until you give me reasons not to. So, and you've found a way. You've been doing it for this long. So just because someone else does a hard test blow doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
that's
all I have to say.
I have heard of the, I think it's in the PTG tuning examination manual that is available from the PTG on the website. If you do too hard of a test blow, it's actually pulling the string through the A graph and making it too tight in the non-speaking length between the A graph and the tuning pin. And therefore the string can actually go back sharp after several days of playing, as it's seeping back through the A graph in the opposite direction.
Sure, yeah. You probably don't want to go more than, like, if you're playing rock on and off or Greek or something, but I think that's, at least for me, that's kind of my threshold is I don't want to go harder than what a pianist is going to play at fortissimo. But more than that, that's not what we're going for. So
and you're going to customers, by the way, everybody, that they say like, hey, they'll do something crazy. They'll be like, do you hear that sound? Like, do you hear that? And they'll be doing something crazy. I'm like, do you do that when you play? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, why would you do that? They're like, well, I just thought of it. I'm like, so you're going to run across customers that will put their pianos through weird things, and you're going to have to learn how to explain to the customers, like, yeah, that's not really a normal playing scenario. I had one customer that he was using the pedals in a way that I've never seen anybody. He was kind of like alternating them with the sostenuto in a really way. And the sostenuto was like, no, I can't do this. This is not what I'm meant for. Yeah. And so he kind of just thought it sounded cool, but it was hanging up. And so sometimes you're going to have to just break it to your customers, like, sorry, it's not meant to do that. So what made me think of that is a test blow, Jacob, where it's like, you don't, what would they be normally playing? That's about it. But I am surprised when we got this thing, how heavy it was. So if just listen to it. So that's about. Yeah, that's about. guess it just seems more aggressive because I'm using this little guillotine thing.
And that's kind of what I keep in mind when I'm using this as well, because I'm not trying to
Yeah.
pound it. I'm trying to do the same amount as my hardest, not my hardest, but as fortissimo I would play as a pianist.
Yeah.
So if my client is playing Grieg constantly, they're gonna need something very stable. And so that's like pounding it so that, like Corbin said, like we don't want to go more because that does introduce instability.
Yeah.
But just testing it, that's why it's called a test blow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of my goal when I use this thing. So
Has anybody ever used the Levitan C, big old C type? Have you ever seen that where you're kind of going like this?
I want to.
Never used it, so I don't know how it would feel.
Wait, what's this? Yeah, thumbs up. Is Joel's like thumbs down? Is that what you're doing?
No, never have used it. Haven't seen anyone use it. Haven't seen it in person.
I've only seen it in person twice, and both technicians were very seasoned and been doing it for a long time. But it was the strangest thing to watch. It was crazy. It was just them sitting here and just going like that. But to be honest, I don't think I would like that because you're using your kind of sides like this. I guess, I don't know. I like to kind of use more of my shoulders up here and that kind of the back area than kind of twisting that way. I don't know.
It's like going back to what Jacob was saying. Like with that, there's no flag pulling. You can't do that because you're turning at the height of the pin. But in some cases, you want that. So I feel like that would be really difficult if you're used to a certain technique. You're already doing it over here, but now you're losing that that twist or that flag pull that you might be used to.
Yeah.
But we do that. We're not like really flag pulling, but yeah, like if you're within like 2 cents, you're right there, kind of forcing it, not forcing, but pushing the hammer down. And also I've heard that some people think that stabilizes the string. It's releasing tension in the non-speaking lane. And I think it's true because I used to do a lot of test blows and I don't really do that anymore. And they're pretty stable, I think. Yeah. Ramsey's as well. They seem pretty good. So like at that last second, kind of just pushing down towards the strings, kind of like putting the weight of my arm on the ball, kind of down towards the dampers, and I find that it's a pretty stable tuning, and it can get it right there where you want it at that last second.
Yeah, it is kind of a back and then downward is what I noticed with mine. Is that kind of what you all do too? Is it's not just an over, it's kind of a setting downwards.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's kind of what it is. It's that downward pressure. And I guess you are bending that pin. You're going to bend it to the side. But to me, I think it's releasing that pressure without having to release it with a hard blow.
Yeah.
That's just my theory.
Last month in the Denver PTG chapter meeting, we were talking about stability. And one method that was used is actually the last motion with the hand pressure on the tuning lever is pushing it just slightly counterclockwise, not enough for it to actually move the very bottom of the pin, but just the top of the pin, and then pushing down, flag pulling just slightly. And then once you've got that pressure on it, then doing a test blow to pull the string through the A graph, and then letting go and doing a test blow again to see if it sticks.
So you're saying that Coburn, you're actually taking it like, if you would, like riding a motorcycle, you're kind of going like this, but you're going the clockwise to kind of go downwards with it. Is that what you mean?
No, actually turning the very top of the tuning pin counterclockwise, as if you're tuning it flat, but not enough for the actual foot of the base of the pin to move. So the top of the pin counterclockwise, and then flag pulling down just a tiny bit, doing a test blow in that position, and then releasing pressure off on the lever.
Wow.
So like you're picking, are you gonna pick your hammer up a little bit so it's pulling more of the top of the pin, or no?
Pressing the ball down towards the strings,
Oh, I see.
and then
Oh.
doing the test blow while you're holding pressure down.
Mm.
It's one of those things. Like sometimes when people describe things to me, it's like, you got 3 things that I can work on trying to do, but once you add the 4th, it's like, you know, like. Coburn used to be a part of our Seattle department, and so it was fun because I was actually, Coburn, I didn't mention this to you. I followed up some of your customers that I think you had tuned for years ago, because you were the last one to tune them. So I was up in Seattle, and so his tunings were pretty solid, I have to say. Coburn, good kudos to you, dude.
Thanks.
I hear more and more people talking about what Coburn's saying, that push down towards the string, and that's kind of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
The more I look into, like, I watch videos on stability or listen to podcasts, that's what a lot of people are talking about right now. Kind of that downward pressure, kind of flag pulling it on purpose. To me, I think it releases that tension without having to do a hard blow. But I'm interested in doing what Coburn's saying, testing it while you have that downward pressure. Maybe it's like a even better effect. Did you find that it works pretty well, Coburn?
Well, the ultimate goal is to have the non-speaking length just a tiny bit more tensioned than the actual speaking length. Because whenever you do a test blow, you're creating more tension in the speaking length. And whenever you're making that test blow, whenever the hammer is actually contacting the string, it's putting a lot more tension on the string. And you want that momentary tension on the string to be the same as the tension in the non-speaking length. So when the speaking length is at rest, it should be just slightly less tension than the non-speaking length. Therefore, whenever you're pressing down on the ball of the tuning lever, you're essentially wanting more of the string to slide through away from the tuning pin and towards the speaking length. Then when you let go of the tuning lever, it's pulling the pin back and introducing that tension in the non-speaking length.
Oh, yeah.
You said that very clear. That was really good.
Yeah, that was like.
That made a lot of sense.
Rattled it off. That was really good. So we're going to tune this thing on Wednesday. Coburn was the last one to tune it, so. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. So we're going to be tuning this piano from kind of start to finish. We'll go ahead and measure it. I'm going to hopefully get a good angle so that we can also show you kind of, hey, this is how far out of tune it is, and this is where I'm going to be setting it with the ETD. Coburn, Alan kind of swears by our Seattle tech. This is interesting. He likes to go concert mode and then smart tune. Have you found that that's a good technique for your cyber tuner?
You mean when he's tuning a piano twice in one sitting?
Just all of them. He likes to go switch it. I thought he said to the concert mode, but then he hits smart tune. I thought that's what he was saying.
Oh, so he's making the parameters on the screen. So that it's minus 10 cents plus 10 cents, and then you're only viewing that small window as opposed to minus 25 plus 25.
Exactly.
I haven't messed with that a lot. It seems like it makes the little spinny circle bounce around too much.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, he was just saying that. I'm like, I've never experimented with that. That's one of the fun things we can do with these cyber tuners. There are some options there.
Yeah, and the same thing with the ETD that I use, Pianoscope. You can change for what you're seeing. I think by default it's 100 centimeter away, and then you can scale it lower if you want to, and you can put per piano with the file that you created versus what your default is. So by default, I set mine to 50 cents on either of 0. That way, if I'm going into a new piano, then I can have a lot of scope for something that could be well out of tune.
Yeah.
If I was going to tune a piano that's tuned on a regular basis, then yeah, I might scale that to more like, 10 to 20 instead, where you're much narrow. Makes a lot of sense.
By the way, this kind of brings up my service call from today. One of our technicians went out there and she had issues with the bass. And so I went back out there, tuned it. It was pretty close to where, so I tuned the whole thing up again. And so I'm like, hey, try the bass this time. She's like, yeah, I still feel the same issues. I feel like it's not right, these octaves. I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and put it where I think you want it. And so then I did. I just lowered everything so that the octaves sound what she wanted. This was a GH1. So it's like a 5 foot nothing. So it just didn't have a lot of great bass. So I put it right there. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, but I don't like this. So then I said, well, how about we put it where I think it should go? So then we moved it back a certain way. And then she's like, there, I like it right there. And so we did that. And then by the time we were done, it was exactly where the Cyber Tuner had left it. So all that to say is take that little extra time sometimes and be like, hey, you know what? You're right. Mrs. Smith, let's go ahead. I think it was like the A's. So she there, I like that. Okay, perfect. Okay. Then we just kind of went through the motions. And then I'm like, well, do you like it with this? No, I don't like it with that. So then we moved it to where the Cyber Tuner thought it should be. She's like, actually, I do like that. You're right. That is the best. So then she was happy. So sometimes you will have to kind of do a little bit of that. Just be cool with just working with your customers, because they may just want it a certain way, and your job is just kind of like help them accomplish that. But when I've done that in the past, 9 times out of 10, they want it go back where it was. I don't know if you've experienced that, Jacob, at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I was going to say was, in the same way, it's really important to show that you're listening. And even if you do end up right where you were started, they'll know that you're listening and that you're trying to help their situation, not just try to get out the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, with the exception of one person, every single time it's been like, okay, there's a nice way of saying, okay, where do you want that then?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we sit down and go, okay, it's flat now. Okay, yeah, it sounds too flat. Okay, let's bring it back up. Okay, this is a perfect octave, but now listen to these chords. Okay, yeah, that doesn't really work. Okay, now it's back where we started.
Yeah.
And it sounds fine. The one exception was that it was a historic temperament, and
okay,
just didn't like that, and I tuned it for her, but it didn't sound good to me.
I would say I had one person, and it wasn't his historic temperament, but the customer, he was just really stubborn, and I think we both knew it didn't sound better, but he's like, yeah, it sounds better that way. I'm like, sure, let's do it. Write the check out.
He's just going to live with his consequences at that point.
It is interesting.
Did he call you back?
Yeah.
No,
did you go back the next year?
Out, but then we just tuned it to standard every time afterwards. He was fine.
Nice.
It is interesting how people will get used to that sound, like that out of tune, and they're just not used to it. It doesn't sound right to them, but it is right. Yeah, Jacob, it's like you said, you just have to listen to them, because we're trying to give them what they want anyway. I mean, so yeah, listening's really important. That's tricky though.
And a lot of times it is something about voicing or something else, and it's not really tuning. But to sit down and then have that opportunity to go, oh yeah, it is actually voicing. Look at the deep grooves in your hammers. Let's talk about that instead, because obviously tuning is not going to change that. And
Coburn, you're right about poor scaling. Those G series pianos, those Yamahas have just horrible scaling issues. Kind of this weird octave right here.
Yeah, I just put a link in the chat with 22-second just audio clip of a piano where I found I think it was like 1 string per bass all the way up until the tenor break, and then 2 strings for everything else all the way up to the top note. And it was really bad scaling. The octaves were really far off. So take a listen to that clip when everyone gets a chance.
Yeah, another thing that I think Jacob hit on it just really briefly is I would say that 9 out of 10 times when we're going back into the customer's house after we've tuned the piano, it's due to the fact that the tuning is now so much more precise and piercing. And so they'll think that something's off, something's wrong, because they were so used to the unisons being kind of wonky. And now that everything's so pure, everything's so intense. And so 9 times out of 10, again, it's usually that, and we'll just go ahead and soften the sound a little bit. Soft pedal voicing, angel shot, and they're thrilled. So
yeah, that's what I was talking about last week. I'd asked Stacy that we've been getting more calls like that. Like, oh, the piano, it's like echoing now, or it's loud, but they're just those unisons aren't pure, so obviously it's gonna sound weird. And we start talking about like light bulbs, like if you're used to a certain temperature of light, and once you change that, you're like, oh, everything's weird. It's not that it's worse, it's just it's different. Yeah.
The way I kind of describe it is like, at least for people that are kind of, especially you can tell when it's like, it's 50 cents flat and then you're bringing it up and then they're like, oh, that sounds weird. So the way that I kind of talk to them about it, because they probably don't play their piano very often, is it's the opposite of noise canceling headphones. Noise canceling headphones take wavelengths and then they add the opposite wavelength to cancel that out. Pianos, as you tune them and get the unisons in place, they're amplified by themselves. So they'll build on themselves, and the scaling is that much more important. And so therefore, it sounds awesome. But then sometimes it kind of gets loud, and you have to work on that too. But
I think we're describing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to what we're saying, like the bass, it sounded weird. I don't know if you remember a few months ago that lady called and she was upset that Ramsey's used an ETD, or she's like, it just doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Our mentor went out and tuned it by ear, but he's like super anti ETD. And at the end, he was like, well, he's like, honestly, I didn't change it that much. And he's like, honestly, he's like, I think the problem was that the fan was on. the fan was on, and so I think that was making the lady hear like weird stuff. But even if that wasn't it, yeah, she was like I think she was just stubborn, because like when I got there, I tested it, I was like, these are like pure fifths, pure 12ths, sounds perfect. And then she's playing it, she's like, that's not a fifth, that's not a fifth, I'm telling you. And I'm like, those are fifths down there, man. And she was like, no, that's not how it sounded before. And even though the piano had been tuned like in 5 years, I was like, well, obviously it's in tune now. It wasn't in tune before. But even our mentor afterwards, she's like, yeah, it honestly wasn't that much. Like, he didn't have to change a lot. But I think he stretched it more on purpose just to like prove a point that there was a difference between the oral tuning and the ETD. So I think he was also kind of messing around with it. But even at the end, I saw him later that day, and he's like, honestly, I just think the fan was on. I think that was the problem.
Jacob hit on it. At the end of the day, it's about letting them know that we're listening to them, and you'd be amazed at how little we actually have to change something, and how much more of it is just them being able to talk, and we validate them, to explain things more to them, and then let them be a part of the process. Usually that solves the issue. And it's kind of funny how that works. It really is psychology and the human condition of just wanting to be heard.
Oh, yeah. If you can say back what they're saying, where they're like, oh, he's hearing me, they're hearing me, like that, just like it's just, like when you have a little kid and they're like frantic and you're like, wait, do you want this? Like they can't talk yet, but once you say what they want, they're just like calm right down, like, yeah. They're just like so relieved that someone understands them. So it really is just, everyone wants to be like understood. It's so important. So important. And you don't have to agree with it to validate them. You don't have to agree. You can still validate without agreeing. So that's huge.
Yeah, you get people that ask about like, oh, what about 432? What about? I'm like, I'll tune it to that if you want. It doesn't really matter my opinion about that.
Yeah.
That's not the standard, but sure, let's do it. So
So-
it's the similar thing.
So
You just-
Jacob or David, how often do you guys get historical tunings? Is that pretty rare nowadays?
I think it's pretty rare for me. I don't know about you, Jacob.
I only have one client that does that.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I actually have to head off to go get my hair chopped off. So I will see you all on Wednesday, and we'll tune this piano together. Sound good? Cheers. See y'all.